A lot of political parties are losing support, and some are targeting a voter base that actually has no cooking clue what the party actually stands for. But yes, we can talk about a lot of political parties that do not fulfill their promises, which we've seen time and time and time again. But what I really want to focus on is the availability of information that could really help young people critically decide which parties and which organizations they choose to support in the future. But despite this availability of information, why do we still have not only a lack of political literacy, but also media literacy as well? While some members of the youth feel like the information in news coverage, in interviews, is just way too negative, others feel like it's just an overwhelming amount of information that you need to keep track of in your daily life. And especially with the second group, they feel like the only way that they are able to consume information is through short form content that they find on TikTok or Facebook, YouTube Shorts. And so they don't have the contextual background to truly identify the difference between what is true news and what is false. While some people are able to make this distinction between true news and fake news, they don't have the context behind the news that they are consuming, and so they might end up misleading themselves. Some might come across commentary videos online or written articles on news feeds. But because they don't have the background about the news that they are reading, they are not able to grasp the context of the written articles that they see or even see the visual cues that allude to the context of the video. In the world today, we are actually seeing a rise between the ages of 25 and 34 of the consumption of video content online. But because there is a lack of media literacy in not only seeing visual cues in video content, but also understanding the context of written articles, we may be able to look at studies like the one by the African Journalism Studies Journal, who ran focus group experiments across 8 South African universities and interviewed 6 educators to identify how young people performed in distinguishing different types of inaccurate content, authenticating online information, and using technology to verify the images and videos that they saw. The study actually found that while some people became more assured in their ability to identify inaccurate information, others became cynical of news altogether. The paper also addresses the possibility of people misleading themselves. And what I would think are great examples are people not being able to see visual cues in videos like subtitles, stickers, disclaimers, tags, hashtags, and then also people who also place higher value on certain pieces of information over others. The study described this personal misleading as a tendency for audiences to seek information that reinforces pre-existing beliefs while rejecting content that challenges them, which is essentially confirmation bias. According to the American Psychological Association, confirmation bias is a psychological term used when people choose to believe in certain pieces of information simply only when it agrees with what they already believe to be true. Another finding from the study that I found to be very interesting was that they identified that an abundance of information leads people to have competing realities, which leads people to hold such opposing views that they are not able to debate with one another, or even just to engage in conversations in a civil way. Now, the findings of this study actually happened to me in the last video that I posted on this channel, where I dived into the youth's participation in the 2024 national and provincial elections. In that video, I also mentioned a lack of media literacy in congruence with this video, where I urged people that no matter where they hear pieces of information, they need to be mindful of what they see and what they hear. I started off the video by providing context about the 2025 youth participation in organizations and used 2 youth-led marches that happened at the same time that were a hot topic amongst young people across social media. By discussing the events as they unfolded, I was able to visually show that when it comes to youth activism, there are often 2 of several different scenarios that surround youth-led marches in South Africa and also youth activism. On the one end, you have marches that have such little participation that the initial goal of the march ends up not even being fulfilled. And then on the other hand, you have marches that do achieve what they set out to do, but because there is a bunch of misleading information and disinformation being spread about the organization, the achievement gets overshadowed by bad rep. To show the different march outcomes, I picked the youth march that happened as well as the Women for Change march to show how allegations spread and how this causes a rise of disinformation that discredits what the marches and what the organizations actually stand for. I did this by identifying different key role players that were the cause of the spread of misinformation that made people unable to decide what is true and what is not. And so I started off with the first outcome, which was represented by the Youth March, where people were very verbal online, showing a lot of verbal support, but there was actually such little physical support when the march actually came to pass. And to demonstrate the second outcome, I referenced the Women for Change march and the key role players like Bronwyn, who expressed her dissatisfaction with the financial transparency of the organization. And then also Tattooed Poppy, who had expressly communicated misleading allegations that eventually led to his lawsuit. And also from other commenters on the original now deleted Tattooed Poppy video, where people went to the online store and they saw running t-shirt merch and jewelry to support the Women for Change. They made misleading allegations that actually had no official backing. I posted a portion of the Women for Change segment on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and even here on YouTube Shorts. And in these short form posts, I not only had this to accompany every allegation, but also this in every comment section, in the pinned comments, every description, every caption, as well as in the official video alongside Tattoo Poppy's segment. The only time when I actually did share my own personal perspective and declaration, if you will, was when it came to the whole purple profile awareness campaign fiasco. And the reason for that is because I come from a marketing background. I feel like the organization could have dealt with the awareness campaign in a much more creative way that would have reduced the backlash that the campaign was getting, with many people having the online sentiment that it felt like performative activism and that it felt disingenuous. For me, I felt like this may have played a role in the image of the awareness campaign at the time. But going to the clip itself, it garnered a hell of a lot of views on TikTok and on Instagram. But despite all the visual disclaimers across different locations associated with the clip, I still got comments from people not only attacking the organization because they already believed in these allegations, but also because people were also attacking women in general. As comments flooded in and some commenters replied to other commenters and those commenters responded to other commenters, a lot of people were going in, falling victim to confirmation bias. And so I had to make the difficult decision to disable the comments. But making this decision to disable the comments was actually very difficult for me because, I appreciate all comments, the good, the bad, the ugly. But for the most part, I am an independent journalist and I value authenticity and the spread of correct information. However, because of confirmation bias and because of a lack of awareness of the visual cues that were provided, I had to make a very difficult decision. Because viewers saw comments that aligned with their pre-existing beliefs about the organization and what the organization did, they left comments that did not actually align with the sentiment of the video, but rather from the sentiments of other misleading commenters. What's ironic to me was in the full episode, I actually spoke briefly about how people need to be mindful of the things that they see, of the things that they hear, and to understand a broader context. And by people reacting in the way that they did, they proved the point that I was making, that it is so important for us to actually increase the level of media literacy amongst young people in South Africa. But let's zoom out of South Africa for a second, and we actually start to realize that the lack of media literacy is a global phenomenon, even for topics unrelated to politics. For example, the beauty industry.
It's actually making me lose my freaking mind how little media literacy some of y'all have, and I am here to show you. Because you're not thinking about what I'm about to say as media literacy, but it is. It is 2026, and you need to have this skill because your brain is rotting. This is a video that Kylie Jenner posted today, and if you saw it and you click the comments, you will see everyone in the comments saying, oh my God, she looks so young. She looks so refreshed. She is using a beauty filter. It's right here.
Yet, if we filter in the topic of last week's video where I spoke about the political participation of young people in the last elections, and we pair that with the lack of media literacy, is there even a connection at all? Well, the only way that we can actually answer that question is if we look at some research. According to a study published by the Croatian Sociological Review, the relationship between media literacy and political participation was tracked across different generations. It was found that people with a higher level of media literacy did not always have an increased level of political participation. Now you may be thinking, okay, Michaela, great. Okay, so media literacy does not always coincide with political participation. But this is an international study. You know, what the hell does this have to do with us? And that's the question I want to pose to you guys. You know, do you feel like the findings of this study are applicable within the South African context, especially amongst young people? But for now, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.